Hello, everybody. Here's another installment of Biology in the Basement with Mr. Andraco. This is kind of a review slash lecture for people who were absent. So if you're in any of those categories and you want a refresher or a review of what we did at the beginning of this unit, this is part one. Part two will include more details on the virus, and I'll give you some homework assignments for each of those sections. So here's a fact of the day so that we can get started, and that is Japan is the country who is the best at returning lost items, specifically cell phones. In 2018, 130,000 cell phones, or 87% of cell phones lost in Japan, were returned to their owners, and that was 2018. So that's pretty good, 87% average. All right, anyways, here we go. The diversity and unity of living things, as I was trying to focus on, is just the differences and similarities in living things. Classification is how we understand those living things. There are two parts to classification, and that is grouping them. Taxon just means grouping, so taxonomy is the science of grouping. Nomenclature is the science of naming living things. And as we discussed, you use the genus and species, the most two specific groups, to describe and name a living thing. The examples that you have here, if you can see them, are things like Ursus arctos, the grizzly bear, or Ursus maritimus, the polar bear. The levels of classification, as you have done or will do in your homework, go as follows: domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. And they kind of work like a funnel. As you go further down, you get more specific. We, as humans, we fall in the animal kingdom. We have a spinal cord. We have a backbone. We are mammals. We're primates. We're upright walking primates. And so our name is Homo sapiens, scientifically. While I was in high school through college, things switched from 5 kingdoms to the new system of 3 domains, as we found some large differences in bacteria that we couldn't ignore. So we split the bacteria into 2 separate domains. I like to teach this in the 5 kingdom system, just lumping all bacteria together because they are very similar for this level of understanding. That's the cat and Sam, my sound and camera crew, making noise. Don't mind them. They'll make an appearance later, I'm sure. Anyways, as you can see, the bacteria makes up about half of the biomass on our planet. This is a pie chart. And so just to let you know, there's a lot of bacteria out there. They like to use this diagram as the flower of life, where bacteria and your protobionts were the first living things that gave rise to the different bacteria, as well as the protists. The protists were so diverse over such a long period of time that something similar to adaptive radiation took place, where they gave rise to 3 whole kingdoms. It's like adaptive radiation on a higher level. This is a spreadsheet kind of similar to the way your projects will be working. Of course, it's split sideways. I took some time to talk about the 5 kingdoms and how they have some similarities and differences, aka unity and diversity. The Monarans are the most diverse in that bacteria are the only kingdom that is prokaryotic. They are also primarily unicellular, and that's the bacteria. As you saw in my lecture, there's good bacteria, bad bacteria, mostly good stuff. The protists, very diverse group. I gave you the one lecture that was more general to help you with your projects, but just know that the protists are very diverse in that some are autotrophic, where they're like algae and they make their own food. So they're like plants, but they aren't. Some can swim around and eat stuff like animals do. Those are usually what are called zooflagellates. And there's even some that grow like fungus and reproduce by spores. So there are fungus-like protists as well, and you can see how they gave rise to those other three kingdoms. Fungi, as I just did the lecture, you'll watch it later. Fungi are, remember, eukaryotic cells. They are multicellular heterotrophic, where they are consumers. They're either parasitic, where they're feeding on hosts, or they are saprobic, where they are feeding on dead or decaying matter. Plants, as we've heard earlier this year, are a group of the autotrophic, multicellular family of plants, where they carry out photosynthesis, reproduce mostly by seeds, but some reproduce by spores. One common highlight here is the corpse flower. This flower actually smells like dead stuff. This is, of course, an adaptation to attract certain flies to come and help pollinate it. The animal kingdom, as we know, that's us. We are eukaryotic, multicellular. We have to consume, meaning we are heterotrophs. Reproduction is mostly sexual. There is some parthenogenesis that also takes place in some species, as we learned about. Some of the other terms to know: autotrophs, aka producers. They produce their own food through photosynthesis. Heterotrophs, aka consumers. They consume their food through... Yes, Kitty just came by. That's Dukes, by the way, if you can't see him. Heterotrophs, they consume from outside source. Different types of heterotrophs, you probably learned these in like 3rd grade, where there are carnivores that eat meat, herbivores that eat plants, and omnivores that eat both. Some newer consumers to learn about are parasites that feed on a host, saprobes that have the job of feeding on decaying and dead material. Dukes, nobody wants to look at your butt. We have detrivores that are usually feeding on dead and decaying material, you know, like millipedes and stuff that are feeding on dead plants. And insectivores, obviously, like bats, eat insects. Phylogeny is the new way that we classify things. We don't just classify things by physical structure, we classify things by lines of evolutionary descent. And this is one of the things that you've probably seen in your homework that you will be assigned, where instead of grouping things by the physical structures, but when they appeared, because it may differentiate and help you to group things better. Okay, the next lecture, part 2, will be all about viruses. So I'm going to stop there. Sam, come and say hi. Sam's my cameraman. So say hi, Sam.
Hello.
And thank you, Sam, for being cameraman. I hope you did a good job. We'll find out really soon. Okay, go turn off the camera. Thank you. We'll see ya.